Chapter 4 Marie. The months passed quickly at Drosselmeyer's estate. The winter snow melted, giving way to cool spring rains and warm summer breezes. Marie settled into her new life. She quickly found that her uncle Drosselmeyer ran his estate like a well-oiled machine. Meals, lessons, and even free time were all meticulously scheduled by the servants. But Marie didn't mind. The servants were always kind, and Marie felt glad for the structure. She always knew what to expect. The quiet moments at night when she was all alone with her thoughts were the hardest. She missed her parents terribly. Sleep came fitfully or not at all, filled with nightmares where she came out for them in the dark, only to hear her own cries echoing back. But she refrained from telling the servants, worried they might think her ungrateful. "Marie, you have circles under your eyes again," they'd say. "I'm all right," she always reply. "Thank you." Sometimes, while playing in the garden, Marie would catch the scent of roses and become overwhelmed by a memory of her father's carefully tended flowers growing in sunlit pots. Or she'd swear she could feel someone place a hand on her back while she played with her doll, the way her mother used to do when it was time for dinner. It was in those moments that Marie would run to find the precious music box Drosselmeyer had given her. She'd open it, listen to its pretty melody, and imagine that her parents' love was inside. "I love you too," she whispered back. What Marie enjoyed the most about living at Drosselmeyer's estate were her regular tinkering lessons. Those were entirely new, and her thoughts never drifted to sad places while she was working. Drosselmeyer had started her with the basics: watches, clocks, wind-up toys, and gadgets. But Marie was a fast learner, and each skill came easily. It wasn't long before Drosselmeyer had her helping him with his latest prototypes: motorized wagons, mechanized hot air balloons, even a conveyor belt that wrapped around the length of the estate, allowing them to move items from room to room without taking a single step.
Here you go, Mommy.
Thank you, sweetie.
Throw it in the trash.
Can you? "Clever girl," Drosselmeyer would say to her at the end of each lesson, impressed. "If you don't slow down, I'll need you to start teaching me." But Marie wouldn't slow down. Tinkering brought her purpose and peace. With each new contraption, it was almost as though she had a tiny bit more control over the world. And for a little girl whose dreams were filled with smoke and haze, that was a powerful feeling indeed. Summer turned to winter. Christmas came and went, and then another and another. Every year, Drosselmeyer would ask Marie what she would like for Christmas. "A party," she'd always reply. So he would have the cooks prepare her favorite dishes and ask the more musical servants to strike up a tune. Then he would whisk Marie to the great hall, dancing around the Christmas tree, pretending they were at a brilliant ball. Marie grew taller, her hands steadier as she worked. Her governess moved her from primary school lessons to concentrated subjects. In the blink of an eye, 3 years had passed, and Marie was 10 years old. "Yes, sweetie."
Is your watch charged?
"Yeah, my watch is all charged up." "Thank you." She had grown to feel like she had been at Drosselmeyer's estate her whole life. The one thing she missed, however, was other children. Few of Drosselmeyer's friends were young enough to have children around Marie's age. And while Marie was allowed to venture into town with the servants as often as she studies and tinkering would permit, making friends wasn't easy. Living at Drosselmeyer's estate carried an air of mystery. People were intrigued by her. Fascinating, really. But parents seemed wary of suggesting something so pedestrian as a playdate to a man as important as Drosselmeyer. And since children didn't stop by the mansion of their own accord, Marie found herself mostly alone. But she didn't mind. Not really. As long as she had her uncle and her inventions, she was content. And when she wasn't studying or playing with her doll in the garden, the servants knew where they would find her: Drosselmeyer's workshop. One afternoon after her lessons, Marie was tinkering with an especially complex invention. Drosselmeyer had been away on business for several days and wouldn't be home until the next morning. Marie used the opportunity to complete a new mechanism he'd been perfecting, a dancing ballerina that pirouetted across a gilded marionette stage. To the untrained eye, it would appear like a normal entertainer's puppet, but upon closer inspection, one would discover that this ballerina danced without strings. Marie peered through her mechanic's loop, tuning the last miniature screws. "Almost done, Sugar Plum," she said to her doll, which was resting on the workbench beside her. That was the one crunch she'd carried over from her old life. Marie never went anywhere without her doll. A year or two earlier, she'd made the mistake of bringing her doll openly to school lessons. The governess had scolded her so sternly, Marie didn't make that mistake again. Now she usually tucked her beloved companion away in her book sack, or even under her skirts if needed be. Marie knew it was a bit childish, but Sugar Plum had been with her from the beginning, since even before the fire. There. Marie tightened the last screw and leaned back. The ballerina was complete. She removed the loop from over her eye and wound the tiny key on the doll's back. The ballerina whirled gracefully to life, skimming across the marionette stage on two pink satin point shoes. "It's perfect," Marie smiled proudly. "Uncle Drosselmeyer will be pleased." Marie looked to where Sugar Plum sat slumped. The doll's porcelain limbs rested upon the workbench, its tuft of silky pink hair coiled atop its head, beautiful, yet motionless. "I wish I could make you dance too," Marie said wistfully. "You'd look lovely." She glanced around at the various mechanical toys in the workshop. Bears and soldiers and one monkey bands were fascinating, but certainly not as pretty as Sugar Plum. Meanwhile, the dancing ballerina's key wound down. It tilted its head and lowered its arms, coming to a stop. Marie studied the ballerina. Then she looked at Sugar Plum. Her doll had fabric joints at the elbows, knees, and wrists. How simple would it be, Marie thought, to replace the fabric with gears? Marie looked to the ballerina. She looked to Sugar Plum. I wonder. Early the next morning, Drosselmeyer entered his workshop. He was tired from his journey and intended to drop off his tools before retiring to his chambers. But to his surprise, the gas lamps in the workshop were lit, and Marie was fast asleep at the work table, her head resting upon her arms. "Marie," he said, gently waking her, "have you slept here all night?" Marie stirred and cleared her throat. "I'm sorry, Uncle." Her voice was hoarse. "I didn't mean to fall asleep. I was working." Drosselmeyer turned his attention to the work table, where a lovely mechanized doll danced without strings. "I could see that," he replied. "You've gotten the ballerina to dance." "Well done." The old man stopped. He gazed at the pink-haired doll dancing across the table. "But this is not the ballerina we were working on." He sounded surprised. For Drosselmeyer, that was very unusual. The doll pirouetted perfectly in point. "Is this your doll?" Drosselmeyer asked, amazed. "Yes," Marie said proudly. "Isn't it grand? But how on earth were you able to mechanize her?" Drosselmeyer watched as the doll did a perfect arabesque. "It took me all night," Marie explained. She felt fully awake now. "But her joints were fabric, you see. I replaced them with gears. The inside of her porcelain was hollow, giving more than enough space for the mechanics. It was simple, really, once I started. Almost like she was meant to dance." "Incredible," Drosselmeyer whispered. "Do you really think so?" Marie asked, beaming with pride. "I do indeed," Drosselmeyer said, his eyes fixed on the doll. Sugar Plum turned to face him, her head tilted. "If I didn't know any better," he said, "I would almost think she had come to life."